Coming up this week on A Captain's Log, Chuck Picerni gives us stunts, stories, and Star Trek. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Strap in. It's A Captain's Log.
Now the sky's the limit. Nobody can stop us to create a story worth retelling to us. Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.
Hey, welcome aboard. This is your Star Trek talk show, A Captain's Log. Now, we have an absolutely thrilling episode lined up for you. Our guest this week is someone who lives on the edge, quite literally. Charles Picerni Jr. is the fearless individual who brings our favorite action scenes to life, risking it all to deliver those heart-pounding moments that leave us on the edge of our seats.
Ooh, the edge of forever. And not to mention someone who leaves us on the edge of the galaxy's barrier with action-packed dramatic news and interviews is the dynamic duo of you, Brian Kreutz, ambassador to the fans, and me,
Lily Fox Lim. But you, Commander, Starfleet's finest forensic fan of all fandoms, Star Trek, is Lily Fox Lim.
And today, you'll take a warp-fueled trek into a well-known stuntman and coordinator as we dive into the world of high-octane stunts in Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock film from 1984, plus Star Trek Deep Space Nine's most home of the future, that is past tense now that it fictionally took place in 2024.
Oh yeah, that episode title is past tense, right? But gosh, you always put it in all these amazing idioms. But Chuck Picerni will delve deep into an adrenaline-fueled set of experiences that make his job one of the most exciting in the entertainment industry and Star Trek flavored.
That flavor is something to savor, I'm sure. In the vast universe of entertainment, our guest this week is the real-life embodiment of a Klingon helmsman and Earth's San Francisco sanctuary SWAT team from Deep Space Nine, boldly going where no one has gone before.
That's right, Lily, but first we have some Star Trek news, I believe.
Star Trek news. Actually, BK, I'm sorry, but Chuck is going to have so many amazing stories. Let's save the news for next week, at least.
Fair enough.
According to my sources, he has some teasers about his father as well for a part 2 interview.
Nice, can't wait.
Back in a flash here on A Captain's Log.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Hey, welcome back to A Captain's Log. I'm Brian Kreutz, and that's Lily Fox Lim over there. She's about to give you a demo on some of the new Starfleet training regimen for calisthenics. She's up over across my quarters. Phaser! Whoa!
Yeah. Whew. May seem reckless, but I call this jumping jack flash. Federation officers often do target practice with phasers, and many times those phasers are shot by a stuntman like our upcoming guest, Chuck Picerni. Since you're upgrading your replicator, BK, and it's offline, I'm using the replicator as a target.
Oh, that's why it's
Over
destroyed.
there. Yeah, it's destroyed in between my jumping jacks.
Oh, girl.
That's right. Oh, girl, you go, girl. Not, oh, boy, what the hell is she doing in my quarters? I hope your guest bedroom over there isn't on fire from my left-handed phasering, but I'm sure it's fine.
You sound like Beckett Mariner over there, but it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. No one's staying at that side of my quarters since you had a fight with Raj and you didn't want him apologizing to you in the middle of the night, so.
That's right.
It's all good.
That was a fun-filled night. We'll always remember that.
Yes, it was a fun-filled night. But we'll always remember this.
Right. It was a comfy bed, not as comfortable as yours when you traded me, though.
That's right.
That damned animated Rajbot. Well, you're very sentimental, and that was a fun night. So let's get to our jumpin' jack flash of a stuntman, our interview with Chuck Picerni. Welcome to A Captain's Log.
Thank you so much, Brian and Lily. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's fun talking about stuff I've done so many years back, and Star Trek was one of them. I was a younger guy. I mentioned earlier that I think I was around 21 when we shot Star Trek 3.
Now, Chuck, you were born in Flushing, New York. Back in the 1970s, 80s, and a little bit of the 90s, film was the second best part of the entertainment industry in New York. Talk about how your dad, Charlie, started stunt doubling around when you were born and how you would get into the industry of stunt work yourself.
Yeah, so Brian Lilly, so basically what happened for me is that my dad, brief story on him, my mom and dad were living in New York, And he was going through a period with his mother that he, at 25 years old, was leaning towards getting involved, believe it or not, with the mafia back then and going down a wrong path. My uncle, who happened to be a star actually in those days out in LA, he starred with Vincent Price in the House of Wax, and he started becoming a big star. My grandmother tried to get my dad to come out to LA to get away from the life he was leading there. You know, she was a single mother because his father died when my dad was 3 from gas, from the mustard gas from the war. And so she was doing a lot. He had 4 sisters and himself that she was raising. My uncle, who was older than him, was out, like I say, already established in LA. So he made the move out to LA by himself, drove cross country at 25, quit his job doing construction in New York to become a stand-in for my uncle on a series called The Untouchables in 1961 with Robert Stack. And that led to him getting involved in the stunt industry. And then my mother and I actually flew out to California to be with him 6 months later, once he got us, set up and had an apartment and all of that kind of thing. So that's how it all started. And then he took off from there. And then eventually, as I got older, I wanted to do what he did, and that's what I did.
Ooh, Robert Stack in that classic Untouchables series was a big deal back in the day. That's truly an awesome start for your dad in the industry. We need to know about you as a youngster and getting started.
So Charles, you were very young. Wow, what a cool story, going from one coast to the other. But talk about your earliest memories of your dad stunt doubling, and being in California, watching the 1960s Batman episodes that your dad was a part of. Pretty cool.
When my mom and I came out to join him, I was only 6 months old, so I don't remember any of that. So he was working, like I said, as a stand-in to start on the Untouchables with Robert Stack. My uncle, Paul Picerni, was the second lead on the show, so he was standing in for him. Through the show, he met Victor Paul, who was the stunt coordinator of the show at the time, and also one of the extras and background people. Back then, they did kind of a little bit of everything. So my dad got involved doing stunts and took to it right away, and became very successful doing it and met a lot of people. And like I said, I didn't, as far as my age, we moved out. We were living in an apartment in Sherman Oaks to start. Then we moved in California. Then we moved further into the valley, into Tarzana. We lived in an apartment there. When I started to really remember stuff, I was, probably 4 or 5 like anybody else. And I remember him doing that stuff. And I remember that in, I would say, 1965, 6, I was about 5 years old at the time. And like every kid that age, I think, was into Batman, because that was the Batman heyday series. 1966, it started with Adam West, Burt Ward, and the whole cast of crazies. Well, Victor Paul went on to do that show with Hubie Kern Sr. They became the stunt doubles for Burt Ward and Adam West. And because of their working the show together, they were the stunt coordinators. So they were able to hire stunt people. One of those people was my dad. So he did, out of the, I don't know how many episodes they actually did, maybe 70 or 80, he did about 45 episodes as a stunt person. So he did a lot of those, and there's a lot of, history to that as well.
So you began your stunt career on the popular crime drama in the original Starsky and Hutch in 1977, A Gran Torino, and you were in a unique position. When did you have the first opportunity to be on the Paramount lot in a big gig, The Hunt of Red October and doubling, and how did this all come about?
When I started, my dad was in TV. My dad was actually, at that time, he was stunt coordinating the original series Starsky and Hutch with Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul. And he started that in 1975. I was too young at that point, but in 1977, when I turned 16, I got my SAG card, Screen Actors Guild card, became a stuntman at that point. I mean, I knew from the time I was 8, I wanted to do stunts. I mean, I was, already gearing up for that from training with my dad and other stunt guys that I knew. But I actually physically worked on set when I was 16. And my first stunt was actually my dad, who was a stunt coordinator, but also doubled Paul Michael Glaser for all his action, including driving the red Torino. So my first stunt on the show was, as my dad slid the Torino through an intersection, I was riding a skateboard and I had to dive out of the way to the grass. That was my first stunt. The first Paramount show that I did that I can remember that was a big show. And it was actually, at the time, was a pretty big deal. I was through my dad, he couldn't do it. And I got called, my dad had coordinated Die Hard 1 with John McTiernan as the director with Bruce Willis. And that was in 1987. So when he did that, he became, pretty hot, popular, doing a bunch of shows. So John had another movie come up called The Hunt for Red October. That came up in 89. And my dad couldn't do it. So he talked to John. I had a meeting with John, and John gave me the trust to stunt coordinate Hunt for Red October. And I was literally probably one of the youngest guys to do a studio movie at that time of $125 million at 28 years old. So I was a stunt coordinator for Hunt for Red October. And then I also doubled Alec Baldwin for all the stuff out of the helicopter that we did on the show.
You're at a very young age for your first stunt, and now as a young stunt coordinator, you have a really cool stunt story in the cold waters of Washington, I understand.
Long stories. We were shooting that movie. We were all over the place, from Port Angeles, Washington, doing the helicopter sequence where Alec Baldwin transfers to the sub when Sean Connery is going to defect. So that's a whole deal. So we shot that in multiple locations, from Port Angeles, Washington, where the water was like 36 degrees. I was in a dry suit, freezing. Guys were getting hypothermia. I'm jumping from dropping 40 feet from the helicopter to the water. I mean, it was a whole big thing. But we shot that in many different locations with different pilots from the Navy, all Navy pilots, because they wouldn't allow my pilots to fly, and I was the coordinator anyway. So anyway, so we shot this, and then one of the final days of all these different places we had been shooting this particular sequence, we went to the LA harbor, and we started like 4 a.m. when it was dark, and we didn't have the weather, so they scoped in the weather to be nastier than it was, and all that stuff. We did, again, another new pilot, did multiple drops and the whole thing. The last drop of the day, before the sun is getting too high now, I get in the helicopter. And again, we had a different pilot with this big Sikorsky's. I come out of the helicopter on a wire at about 200 feet. And as we're going down towards the actual sub, the nuclear sub in the water, they start to swing the cable I'm on to simulate the rough weather that I'm getting rocked. And at one point, I have a quick release above me that I'm triggering. So I have to look at that. The guy, Dave Zaletti, that I mentioned to you, was actually doubling an actor. And my friend Monty was doubling the other actor on the top of the conning tower. So as I swing, they have to bring me in with this hook. Well, as I come down, I pull this hook and I release into the water. Now, this pilot elevated. Just as I looked up to pull the pin, he elevated about 20 feet. So now, instead of falling 35 feet, I'm like 55, 60 feet above, the water. And we were coming like that hard into this metal buckle and I had safety guys in the water for me, the whole thing. Well, I hit the water. It pitched me backwards because I was so high. And this metal buckle literally hit me in the mouth. Pow! And it busted my front tooth in half, cut my nose open, split my forehead, and I'm laying in the water half knocked out. And, my guys come to me. They drag me in the boat. Thankfully, that was the last shot of the day. But the ironic thing about it was that was the day before I was getting married.
Now, that's a huge red flag. Are you supposed to get married at this point?
So I'm about half knocked out, half dead, and I'm bleeding. I'm like, oh my God, I'm panicking about the next day. My tooth's broken in half. My nose is destroyed, my forehead. Anyway, I make a call to my dentist. I get him in. He takes me in. He bonds my tooth. He fixed that. And my wife at the time, her makeup artist that was there on the day, she did all kinds of makeup to cover me up, and it didn't look so bad. But that was my story. Should have been a red flag.
Okay, so it's 1983. You're a Klingon helmsman on Christopher Lloyd's character's Captain Kruge, his bird of prey Klingon ship, along with John Larroquette, Tom Morga, for Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Tell us how this Leonard Nimoy directed film came about for you as a stunt performer in the beginning.
Well, basically, the stunt coordinator of the show, R.A. Rondell, was a stunt coordinator. He was looking for guys to play these parts. He knew that getting to the shot that we had talked about previously, doing the air ram, which was this device that throws you over that threw me, through the air before the Enterprise exploded. Well, at the time, I was one of the best guys on the air rims. So he wanted the best guy. So I got hired for the part, went for a fitting, went through makeup, went through all of that, and got hired as one of the Klingons to do that stunt. So, again, we did all the lead ups, the dialogue, for about 5 weeks we were on the show before we actually did the actual stunt.
How many times did it take you to do this amazing Enterprise auto-destruct explosion on the bridge?
When we shot that, Bryan and Lili, we were, like I said, we rehearsed the scene, multiple times, not on stage. But once we got to stage work to do that, we basically had one take at it, because what was happening was when all the guys were getting shot or getting killed or explosions, that was the precursor to the Enterprise blowing up. When Captain Kirk had set a bomb onto the Enterprise, we transport down to it from the bird of prey. Now we're the only ones. The search party is looking for them. They've jettisoned off the ship, and we're left there alone for it to blow up. And the last voice you hear is Christopher Lloyd saying, "Get out, get out, get out of there." And it's too late. All these explosions go off. So the ship is getting destroyed internally. And you see all the different stunt guys doing their little stunts. And then the last stunt is me getting blown over this Captain Kirk's, whatever that command center was. I get blown over that. And then the direct cut from that is they go exterior to a CG shot of the entire ship blowing up and getting destroyed. So that being said, I was the last person alive to this day on the original Star Trek Enterprise.
How cool is that? You're the last person seen alive on the original Enterprise before it destructs. That is so cool. Now, what was it like working with Leonard Nimoy as a director and a stuntman as a Klingon in Star Trek 3?
He was very, for us anyway, like I said, normally, for all the people I've worked in the business, whether it be actors or directors or whatever, they're all, they lose their patience and they are what they are. But with us as doing stunts, I think they hold us a little differently in that they know that we make them look good in terms of the actors, and that the risk of what we do sometimes, and again, it's not all, dangerous stuff, but sometimes it is. And so they're aware of that and they're respectful of that. So they treat us a little differently. He treated us great. He was so gentle, wonderful, and just, knew what he was doing.
Ooh, can you still speak your Klingon line in the original dialect? You're probably losing a lot of weight in those clunky costumes being a Klingon too.
I've always done it for all these years, Lili. I think I had, what was my line? Something like, "Show wit, kat mo, we hosh." I have no idea what that means. And then one of the lines I remember Branscombe said, or one of the guys said, I can't remember, when it sounded like he was saying like you botched it, but the line was, "You botched pool." And I don't know what that meant, but I don't think it meant what it sounds like you screwed up, like you screwed the pooch, basically. That's not what it meant though. And there were some others, I can't remember what else I had to say, but that's the line that sticks out in my head after all these years. I lost sweat every single day, brutal.
Wow.
And, we'd be there for 12, 13 hours, but maybe 3 hours on stage, 4 hours. The rest of it was makeup and then taking off the makeup.
I love Klingons. Even though Kirk never trusted Klingons after the death of his son in this Star Trek 3 film, please go through the stunts you performed specifically, and what were the memories like working with the great Tom Morga,
Yes.
Christopher Lloyd, and John Larroquette, among others, or just any story or memory that you can share from the set?
Again, I'm going back, but I don't think there were many stunts before the end sequence. We were just established Klingons. We had dialogue on the bird of prey bridge, and we had different scenes. There was a kid named, I want to say his name, God, I can't believe I'm remembering this, Stephen Liska. He played the actor that was with us along with John Larroquette and Christopher Lloyd. He was another one that he was pivotal in that scene, but he didn't do any stunts. He just had the dialogue, where some of us had dialogue as well. Like I know myself and Branscombe, and I don't think Tom did. I can't remember who else did. I know Branscombe and I did for sure.
Tell us about learning the Klingon language and also the makeup and teeth.
Ooh.
This is crazy. So did you learn from the great please tell me if you learned from the great Mark Okrand, because I believe he was the Klingon inventor in this movie of the language, the actual language. And you also had Del Acevedo, a famous makeup artist, your own personal makeup artist, from what I understand.
I do remember somebody working with us on the dialogue for sure. But us, we were strictly Klingon, but we didn't have a lot of dialogue. We only had, you know, maybe 4 or 5 lines that I had to remember. So it wasn't that difficult. Once you got those down, it was just a matter of the inflection and that kind of thing. That was the toughest thing, you know, getting that out, especially, and then having those teeth in and trying to do all that. It was crazy. Funny story. I remember my makeup guy was a very famous makeup guy at the time. He's passed away years ago. His name is Del Acevedo, and Del would follow me around like a little grandma, you know, taking my teeth from me when the scene was over, putting them in a cup of Listerine, putting them back, you know, all the shit. He was great, but he was one of the best out there at the time. That was mine. Now there was other ones for the other guys, but he was my personal little guy.
Wow, so you had your own makeup guy?
So cool.
Yes.
Oh, classic Trek on film. Did you think this would turn out to be one of your most talked about roles and just being a part of Star Trek in general, or was this just a regular day for you as a stuntman?
To be honest with you, at the time, like I said, I think it was like 21 or 2 when I did it. And, you know, I had been in the business, like I said, since I was 16. So I had done stunts, but at that time, I was just all about the stunts. You know, I didn't think, you know, what it could be, what it couldn't be. All I thought about is if I did this, maybe it would lead to another one of them, either Star Trek 4 or whatever. But, you know, as different coordinators go, that's how you get your jobs, through the coordinator. So there was somebody else on that didn't hire, whatever. And I had already been, you know, seen on, not that they saw me, but as a Klingon, pretty disguised. But yeah, so to be honest with you, I was thinking about the stunt and what I did and the part I played and that whole thing.
You had a lot of screen time as a Klingon, not only on the Klingon Bird of Prey bridge, but also on the
boarding party, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There were scenes where we're walking down the hallway or on the Bird of Prey or on the Enterprise looking for them. The search, you know, we were the search party, not the search party, but the whatever we were called, I forgot. But, you know, we also got transported. We also got in the teleport room. We got teleported from the Bird of Prey to the Enterprise. So we got that whole thing where we disappeared, you know, so not a lot of actors got to see themselves that happen to, you know, so that was pretty cool.
Chuck, final question on Star Trek 3 with Tom Morgan and other Klingons. You were later a part of that boarding party that beamed aboard the Enterprise to take over command. Now, was it Christopher Lloyd's voice actually yelling through that communicator, or, you know, when the countdown's going on when the ship's about to explode, or was it like a producer off camera of the Enterprise? Tell us like what you remember about the scene on that set when it's about to blow up.
I remember that, I think it was Steven Liska, I want to say it was his name, the actor. And he says, "Sir, there's only nobody's talking, just a computer." And Christopher Lloyd says, "Let me hear." And he puts the mic down to and then you hear the countdown going. And that's when Christopher Lloyd said, "Get out of there, get out." It was Lloyd, and it was, he was one of those guys. And again, if you know John Larroquette, the same thing, but more so with Lloyd, when he, even in the makeup, I could see, you know, Doc from, you know, Back to the Future and that kind of thing. You could see his face, and from Taxi back in those days. And because he actually did Star Trek 3, I believe was before Back to the Future. So yeah, he definitely had that, what was it, the Reverend Jim look.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to a captain's log. Stunt work training and preparation often includes cardio, hard intervals, foam rolling, and mobility drills, but to implement this into a specific stunt scene also requires boldness and preciseness in pace and balance and power. Look, she's doing cardio. She was in the last break. But the determination among many other factors from light to heavy impact on screen is very important. Chuck Picerni Jr. has revealed many secrets and stories so far with us, as he and his father come from a very storied family. Now, Charles and his dad and brother Steve are also Hollywood stunt professionals. Now, it's a family of dangerous stunts and coordinating and doubling actors, much like Dennis Madalone, his father and brother-in-law, who joined him on screen a little bit later. Let's get back to our interview.
Yes, let's.
Okay, let's move on. Many years later at Paramount, thanks to Dennis Madalone, stunt coordinator on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, he helped pinpoint this Jonathan Frakes directed episode titled Past Tense Part 2. Chuck, you were in this as a San Francisco Police SWAT Department team member, which entered the Sanctuary District Processing Center during the Bell Riots in that office building, okay? Now, this took place on Earth of the future in 2024, but it was filmed back in the 1990s, of course. Tell us about your memories of working with Dennis Madalone, Jeff Cadiente, and if you remember, how many days you worked on Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Past Tense, plus maybe a couple of other episodes.
You know what? I want to remember it, but because I wasn't on like that a lot. And I did like a day here, day there, maybe a couple of days in a row, but I don't remember. That's what I mean. Like I said, I've done thousands of shows through the years, unless it's some specific stunt I did, or we talked about the roadhouses and all the stunts I did there, and the commercials I've done, and the bigger highline stunts. Then I'll remember those.
Jeff Cadiente was a stunt double for Siddig El Fadil, who played Dr. Bashir on Earth in a big riot fight with fisticuffs at night, a bunch of burning barrels of fire in San Francisco in this episode as well.
Yeah.
And now you worked with Jeff a lot on Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Voyager. How many days on Voyager did you work?
Jeff was one that hired me for the show as a stunt coordinator. I don't know if maybe it was Dennis, and then Jeff worked on Voyagers, I believe, for Jeff. That's what it was. And that was with the Voyagers with the blonde and the young kid or something like that. I remember that. So that I remember working on, but again, I can't for the life of me remember what I did stunt-wise. But I did work on that as well as Deep Space Nine.
Okay, Chuck. Jeff didn't coordinate. He did stunts so many times on Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Dennis Madalone was the stunt coordinator that you worked with.
Why do I want to think that Cadiente hired me for that Voyagers? Maybe not. Maybe we just worked together. That's why I remember him. I don't know why.
All right, so let's ask this question. We're going to move on a little bit from Star Trek to your stunt role in one of the last but very famous scenes in the Chevy Chase film Christmas Vacation. You were in the scene with our guest from last season, Natalia Nagulik, at Clark Griswold's house, along with Bill Murray's brother, Brian Doyle Murray. Talk about this.
In the film, yeah, I do remember that, Bryan and Lili. My dad actually was a stunt coordinator for the film. He also directed a lot of second unit on it. So I worked a lot of different sequences throughout the whole show, from the sequence when they go to pick up the Christmas tree with the station wagon going underneath the truck and all that whole sequence. I was part of all that stuff, the driving. Then we did a scene where my brother, when Chevy Chase gets on the saucer and he goes zipping down the hill. Well, my brother was actually driving a snowmobile, pulling our stunt double, Chad Rondell, on the disc through the trees and all that stuff. That's behind the scenes stuff. So I was there doing all that stuff. But then the sequence at the house where she worked, I was not only a cop, I drove one of the cop cars in. If you look at it in the scene, you can see one cop car slide sideways and go in the driveway. That's me playing a cop. Then I got in the SWAT outfits and we did the whole attack on the house where I was one of the SWAT guys rappelling off the roof. And it was a tough shot because there wasn't a lot of distance from the roof edge to where I had to go through the window. It was a single story on the bottom. So I couldn't get enough momentum to go through. So when I jumped out and I went through, I just pierced the window, which is a breakaway. And then I didn't make it into the house. I kind of fell back in the bushes. So we had to go to take two. And I told my dad, who was coordinating, I said, look, I can't get enough momentum off the roof to generate enough to get through on a rappel line into the house for that sequence. So I said, let's get a condor back behind the tree. I'll get off the condor. They already got the cut of me coming off the roof. So now I'll get on this condor and just let me go. And they let me go. And I went flying through the window, crashed through it, ended up on my feet. It worked perfect. And it was a perfect cut. And then they cut to all the other guys coming in and all that stuff. So that was my memory of working with her and the whole family.
Oh, it's cool to see a throwback to cars in film for stunts being brought forward into present times. I'm sure there were a lot of car stunt scenes that were Hollywood magic in the Nicolas Cage starring film Gone in 60 Seconds. Tell us about coordinating that film and what are some of the most daring stunts?
The way the movie came about is because the director, Dom Senna, and his producer, Ari Magari at the time, They had seen my work and they wanted me to do the show. I got hired through who was producing that at the time? That was Barry Waldman and a few other guys through Bruckheimer. And Jerry Bruckheimer, I had worked for on other projects. So they hired me to do the film as a stunt coordinator. And they knew my background with cars and all of that. So they wanted me around. So I basically went in there. And I had worked with Nick many times before that on films, going back to Racing with the Moon, for God's sakes, in '84, one of his first projects with Sean Penn. So we had a little bit of a history there. And so when I got the film, you know, the final chase, the last 42 minutes, I believe it is on film, in the script, all it said was, there was one paragraph, little paragraph, director's car chase. That's all it said. I had to go out with Ari and Dom and design the entire car chase of where it went, what it did, what cars were interacting. And that one, we did that for 7 weeks of prep, just setting up this car chase that we ultimately went out and filmed, and took forever, but it was a project. But, you know, I got to, you know, we had the money, obviously, with the budget that it had. And I got to take Nick Cage, you know, and the actors, some of them out to Bob Bondurant's in Phoenix, and teach them how to drive and get them comfortable behind the wheels. I took Angelina Jolie out in a Ferrari to T-Charge. She had never driven a stick. That was a whole nother story. we can't do on film, but that was where her Billy Bob days. So they were out there. You know, there was a lot of fun and just, you know, a lot of work and great people to work with. And I had a great crew of stunt guys that made it easier for me.
No, thank you so much for that, Chuck. You did such a fine set of stunt work coordinating Gone in 60 Seconds. You have another cool stunt story from this film really quick.
The one thing that kind of bummed me out is that when we're shooting that, the last jump, the jump on the bridge, I wanted to do that live. I was going to do it myself. I was going to jump the car 200 feet, ramp to ground, 25 feet high on the actual bridge. And, you know, had it all set up, had the specs, you know, for the ramps, everything I needed, because I had done big jumps and turnovers and all that stuff. So I was prepared for it. But we got behind in shooting. And then by the time we got to doing that stunt and setting it up, we lost the bridge location because they were getting ready to paint it. So because of that, all I got to shoot was the takeoff of the jump, the landing of the jump, and the hole in between was CG'd. And the CG at the time was garbage, in my opinion. It looked so trashy for what we did on the chase. And I wanted to do more, way more than Dom had set up. But it just looked very hokey to me in terms of the final jump. But other than that, I feel it turned out okay.
Oh, I love this. Trekking along in a career conversation we're having with Chuck Picerni.
All right, so this is another episode next week. We're going to delve deeper into the Picerni family's history in Hollywood. Yes, because next week we have a second take with Chuck and his father, Charles.
Yeah, Bryan and Lili, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to that, getting involved. And you get two yappers on camera between my dad and myself. And we got stories upon stories upon stories.
Oh, I can't wait for that action-packed interview.
As much as you told me that Dennis Madalone had a lot of stories, yeah, we'll put them away. I can guarantee you that. There's no doubt about it.
Dennis Danger Madalone, Star Trek's longest running stunt coordinator. Yes, Chuck, you shared some great stories with us and many more to come. Bye for now.
You've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Ooh. Thank you